Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. I hope you all in good condition. Welcome to Literary Works Poetry Seminar. Point of view and character comparison between Laura Riding Jackson's poetry, If a Woman Should Be a Messiah, and In Due Form. I'm Laura Frederick Park as the moderator in today's event. In this occasion, we have four speakers from English Literature student of Yogyakarta State University, which will explain the research about character and persona of Laura Riding Jackson's poetry, If Woman Should Be a Messiah, and In Due Form. The first speaker, Galuh Tri Banowati.
Good morning.
The second speaker, Dita Ade Tia.
Hi, good morning.
The third speaker, Rizky Anggreani. Hi, good morning. The fourth speaker, Balqista Surya Azizah.
Hello, everyone.
Firstly, I would like to read Laura Riding Jackson's biography. Laura Riding Jackson, best known as Laura Riding, was an American poet, critic, novelist, essayist, and short story writer. She was born on January 16, 1909 in New York City and educated at Cornell University. Her first published poem appeared in The Fugitive in 1923. The next year, she was awarded the magazine's Nashville Prize and invited to become a member of the Fugitive group. In 1925, she sailed for England and during 13 years abroad, primarily in England and Majorca, wrote some 20 books of poetry, criticism, and story. Riding's first collection of poetry, The Closed Chaplet, was published in 1926, and during the following year she assumed the surname Ridings. She published her 477-page collected poems in 1938. Her poems deal with gender roles and had many critics about Americans such as John Gould Fletcher and John Crowe Ransom. She completed more than a dozen volumes of poetry before renouncing the craft as inadequate. After returning to the United States in 1939, she renounced poetry and literary affiliations. Having come to see language itself as the essential moral meeting ground, Schuyler B. Jackson, whom she married in 1949, collaborated with her on Rational Meaning, a new foundation for the definition of words, in 1999. She was awarded the Bollington Prize for her lifetime contribution to poetry. Some readers have found Riding's poetry difficult to understand. It also has been difficult to find, as she often refused to have it published in anthologies. Her poems, however, are well worth the reader's time and attention, according to various critics. Next, let's continue to the main agenda of today's seminar. The first explanation is about character and persona poetry of If Woman Should Be a Messiah, from Galuh Tri Banowati and Dita Ade Tia. The first speaker is Galuh Tri Banowati, and the second speaker is Dita Ade Tia. For Galuh and Dita, time is yours.
First of all, I would like to say thank you for the moderator who is introducing me in the opening of seminar. And today, I would like to give some explanation from the poem If a Woman Should Be Messiah. The poem If a Woman Should Be Messiah is written by Laura Riding Jackson. Herself is a Jewess, and Judaism seems to have little influence on her life, personal or professional, and biographers note her rejection of both Judaism and her father's socialism. It is proven through her poem that seems related to Judaism. One of them is If a Woman Should Be Messiah. Scholars have also noted that her various name changes accompany major transition points in her life. The meaning of Messiah in general is a woman who leads in their life According to Judaism, many Jews today believe that God will one day send a Messiah who will lead the world into an age of peace and understanding. In this poem, as long as I see the character from this poem, that the woman feels she cannot reach her dream to become a leader. She keeps all her dreams and chooses to become a mother and wife who is obedient to her husband in her marriage. It can be explained in the last stanza from that poem, be sweet in a marriage and motherhood. Well, the character definition itself is any person, animal, or figure represented in a literary work. Characters are essential to a good story, and it is the main characters that have the greatest effect on the plot or are the most affected by the events of this story. The different type of characters include protagonists, antagonists, dynamic, static, run, flat, and stoke. They can both fit into more than one category and change from one category to another throughout the course of a story. The more Randifer fully developed the character is, the more the reader will empathize with the character. Unlike in prose, where is there room for the writer to use long description and complex interaction to reveal a character, characterization in poetry is often focused and concentrated in a few lines or an image or in inventive use of figurative language, such as poignant metaphor. In this poem, the character is defined as a static character. The definition from a static character is one who shows little to no change in their personality, perspective, or outlook from the start of the story to the end, and it shows those who tend to remain unchanged throughout the poem. The character of the poem itself shows that a woman at the time is quite difficult to become a messiah, or perhaps people are going to think if a woman should be messiah, there is nothing special. The character of the poem itself also can be explained. Perhaps the poet wants to deliver her ideas at the time. If a woman to become a messiah, it could not bring a good story or impressive drama, such as in the first stanza. If a woman should be messiah, it might not be an impressive drama. The character in this poem has a strong personality, especially for a woman at that time. When we look back to the author's background, she was educated at Cornell University and became the only female member of the Southern literary group, The Fugitive, which included Robert Pernwarren, Alan Tay, John Carson. It shows that the author of this poem, Laura Reading, has a strong character as a woman, and that also impacts to this poem. It seems like at the time, women cannot be messiah, or if they are still forced to become a messiah, it will bring pressure for a woman. Perhaps this poem was written in 20th century because as I looking for from other sources, in the 20th century so many tragedies happened at the time. From that poem, the author wants to give some explanation and meaning from that poem, as I said before. The character in If a Woman Should Be Messiah is quite strong because the poem shows us how the women fighting to become messiah, or it could be said to become a leader. In the stanza, such a woman will surely say very little of morals and religion. Such a woman would surely never travel or inspire a gospel. She would live at peace shyly. The meaning from the stanza, if a woman should be a messiah or become messiah, it could be said that there were less of morals and religion. The character in that poem is quite strong, as I said before, because the poem itself uses sarcasm throughout the poem. And the poem, like describing a woman at the time, is not equal as men, or it could be said degrading women.
Hai, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Dita Ade Tia from English Literature Yogyakarta State University. Now, I would like to explain about personal poetry of If Woman Should Be Messiah by Lauran reading Jackson. First of all, let's look the definition of personal poetry. Personal poetry is a poetry that is written from the perspective of a person that creates a poet, who is the speaker of the poem. A wide range of characters are created in personal poem from a variety of sources, including popular cultures, history, the Bible, mythology, newspaper clippings, and etc. The personal poetry evolved further in the 20th century when the term persona became popularized in psychology and anthropology by theorists in these fields. For Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung, persona was the social face the individual presents to the world, a kind of mask, designed on the one hand to make a definite impression upon others, and on the other to conceal the true nature of the individual. Then, the importance of using persona has been discussed since ancient times. Aristotle in the Poetics say that the poet should say very little in propria persona or in his own voice, as he is no imitator or poet when speaking for himself. What this means is that in works of fiction, as like prose, poetry, or drama, the author must put her own personality aside and become a character, the narrator. This is because every word which author writes should be part of the art of his creation. There is no place for his real self in a piece of fiction. He should use the role of the narrator to further entertain and enlighten the reader. Persona are also important because they are part of how authors interact with others in real lives. Using persona in the writing is important because character must have unique persona with different feelings and voices than author have. When author wrote literary works, he can use three different points of view. First point of view by I, second point of view by you, and third point of view by he or she. Whichever point of view they use, the narrator has a persona. But since in the third persona point of view, the narrator is supposed to be the author. Usually, author only talk about persona for first person narrative. However, even a third person narrator can have persona which is not the true author. So, in the poetry If Woman Should Be Messiah by Lauran reading Jackson, Laura wrote the poet use third point of view. The third point of view described by she, her, and it to refer the character of woman and the idea about Messiah. Laura wrote about how people in that era talk about woman if they be a Messiah by the first stanza. The author tried to describe a woman in the poetry as a person who wouldn't give any changes and benefit for everything and everyone if they were a Messiah. Woman couldn't be a leader, couldn't give a good impression, and couldn't make a big changes. By sixth stanza, woman described with the word she. People thought she only could stay at home then became a household for her family. Because of the intellection of people, if woman couldn't control herself, she could only be a dreamer about everything, but couldn't do anything. So woman only could be a wife and motherhood at home. Woman is also hesitate to have a good believing in religion. People thought woman wouldn't share a religion knowledge in a good way. Then there is no leader of religious community from a woman we described in the second and the seventh stanza. Laura tried to describe critiques about how people treat women in the real life and how people look women as a human in the real life. By the poetry persona tried to explain Laura's ideas about people who thought if women couldn't be a leader and build a good story in the life. Next, the assumed role idea of the poetry also about Messiah. Let's talk a little about the meaning of Messiah. In Abraham religion, Messiah or Messiah is a savior or liberator of a group of people. The concept of Messiah, Messianism, and of a Messianic age originated in Judaism and in the Hebrew Bible, in which a Messiah is a king or high priest traditionally anointed. Messiah were not exclusively Jewish, however, and the concept of the Messiah as a single individual is a strictly post-biblical tradition, as it is not found in the Old Testament. In etymology, Messiah literally means anointed one. Here, Messiah is described as a person who leads a life or a group which became a leader that have a good belief in the God. The Messiah is believed by people will bring happiness and helpful for everyone. In the religion, Messiah is like a prophet which is believed by the follower of a religious community and share the best knowledge about life and religion from the God. Simply, Messiah is about religion's leader. Lastly, Laura is explained about an assumed role of a character of woman and the idea of Messiah in the poetry by the poetry persona. She explains critiques of women by people in that era, so readers could know how people in certain era treat a woman and look woman as a human in real life. That's all about the personal poetry of If Woman Should Be Messiah by Laura Diding Jackson. Thanks for the opportunity and the attention. Sorry for any mistaken. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you for both Galuh and Dita. And next, we go to the third and fourth explanation. It's about character and personal poetry of Indoform from Rizky Anggreani and Balqista Azizah. The third speaker is Rizky Anggreani and the fourth speaker is Balqista Azizah. For Balqis and Rizky, time is yours. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hi, good morning everyone. I am Rizky Anggreani. Here I want to talk about the character in the poem Indoform and the character comparison between If a Woman Should Be a Messiah and Indoform. Okay, let's talk about the character from Indoform poetry. I found two characters from Indoform poetry, I and you. The word I means a girl in my opinion, of course. It is because of the word your muscularity. That is not for the word the word your muscularity is not for the word I, but it's for the word you. I think I is a woman and she is a wife. Why I can believe that I is a wife because from stanza in due form of endless full skip, witnessed before a notary and sent by post registered to be signed for on receipt. I think that evidence for why I can believe that I is a woman. And I think that the character I in this poetry is a woman who will divorce from her husband because her husband sent her a form of endless full skip, like the stanza said before, and she has to sign when she received the form. It means the end full skip is the document for they to get divorced. Okay, next. I think you is a man and he is a husband. It is related with your muscularity. Muscularity is identical with man or boy. So I believe that you is a man and he also husband. I also think that he going to divorce from her wife and he is the person who wants to divorce. So he sent his wife in due form on endless full skip. The line at the poetry. I think that is the evidence that he going to divorce. Next, I would like to talk about character comparison between If a Woman Should Be Messiah and Indoform. First, the character in If a Woman Should Be Messiah is not directly said by the author. The author will write the character indirectly. That's why readers should conclude who is the character of the poetry by themselves. Then, the character in Indo form poetry, the author writes directly who are the character in the poetry. Yeah, we can look at their I and you in the poetry, right? Second, it is rated with the point of view for both poetry. The first poetry is not directly explained who is the point of view because it is used she. The word she is not direct person. But the second poetry is directly explained who is the point of view because it uses I and you. Last, in the first poetry, the character is very strong. The author uses sarcasm word throughout the poem. She critiques two people who stole the garden woman in the time. Then, in the second poetry, the image of the character I, who is the woman which very loved the man, in case her husband, as you can see in the line, witnessed before a notary and sent by post registered to be signed for on receipt and opened under oath to believe, an antique paper missing from my strong box. Also, still in the second poetry, the character of the man who is the husband is changing. He has been loved with I, like in the line, I know you love me. Your step is confident, your look is true, you stay beside me, it is a pillow. Then he changed to not love the woman anymore. The evidence in the line abound to clutch when hail touches the chimney. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you for your nice attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning.
Thank you, Rizky, for the time. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Balqista Surya Azizah, and I am going to be speaking to you today about point of view in Laura Riding Jackson's poetry in due form and point of view comparison between Laura Riding Jackson's poetry, If a Woman Should Be Messiah, and in due form. First and foremost, I'm going to be speaking about point of view in Laura Riding Jackson's poetry in due form. To begin, the usage of point of view in a poetry is important to help both readers and authors to comprehend the text. The definition of point of view is a perspective from which a story is told. Put another way, a story's point of view is a way to articulate and analyze the position of the narrator in relation to the story they are telling. Is the narrator a participant in the story they are telling? Or are they describing events that happened to someone else? Both of these perspectives are different types of point of view. By knowing the point of view used in a poetry, the readers may know some things about the author. These things are not limited only on how deep the author tells the work, but will also develop the author's background of life, his or her characteristics, and deeper, his or her personal life. In this poetry, in due form, the author uses first-person point of view by using the pronouns I, me, and my. In the first-person point of view, the narrator is a participant and has an emotional power in telling about certain character in the poetry. And in this poetry, the pronoun I refers to the wife character that basically tells about her feelings and her broken marriage. In the first stanza, we find the usage of the first-person point of view in the first and second line. In the first line, which says, I do not doubt you, by using the pronoun I, and the second line, which say, I know you love me, by using the pronoun I and me. Besides, we also find the usage of the first-person point of view in the seventh line, which says, your stay beside me is a pillow, by using the pronoun me, and in the ninth line, which says, and sleep as my own upon. Meanwhile, in the second stanza, the narrator explains her feelings when her husband's feelings starts to change Then he asked for a divorce to her. The usage of the first person point of view can be found in the first line, which says, "But make me a statement" by using the pronoun me, and in the seventh line, which says, "An antique paper missing from a strong box" by using the pronouns my. The pronouns I, me, and my here emphasize that it is the narrator herself who experienced the feelings. She explains the love and the affection that her husband gave to her, and she keeps believing that her husband still loves her. The first person point of view shows that the statements in this poetry come from I herself. Afterwards, I am going to be speaking about point of view comparison between Laura writing Jackson's poetry If a Woman Should Be Messiah and in due form. In If a Woman Should Be Messiah poetry, the author uses third-person limited point of view by using the pronouns she and her to refer to the woman character. Meanwhile, in due form poetry, the author uses first-person point of view by using the pronouns I, me, and my to refer the wife character and the narrator herself. If a Woman Should Be Messiah, which uses third-person point of view, gives the reader access to the narrator's inner thoughts and feelings, much way the same to the first-person point of view in due form poetry does. But the difference is that there is a critical silver of distance between the protagonist and the narrator that will change the way the main character is portrayed. In If a Woman Should Be Messiah poetry, someone outside the story tells the story. In this poetry, the author tries to describe critics about how people treat women in real life. When this poetry is written during the 19th century, there was still a great gap of inequality between men and women. Men increasingly committed to their place of work, the office, shop, factory. Meanwhile, women were left at home to oversee the domestic duties that were increasingly carried out by servants. Another evidence by the National Archive states that by the early 19th, men could vote, but women could not. So based on these evidences, it can be seen that at that era, there was still a great gap of inequality between men and women, so it might lead to the author's perspective in writing the story of this book. Meanwhile, the character in due form poetry, that is the wife, is the one who tells the story herself. The narrator, act as I here, explains her feelings and her broken marriage herself. If we look back to the author's background, in 1920, she married a Cornell history instructor named Louis Gottschalk, but her marriage was dissolved in 1925. So basically, the story in the poetry and the story of the author's real life have something in common. In short, the point of view between If a Woman Should Be Messiah and in due form poetry share similarities and differences. They have something in common, for they both are the ways of telling the story in the poetry, and they both use pronouns. For a third-person point of view in If a Woman Should Be Messiah uses the pronouns she and her. Meanwhile, the first-person point of view in due form poetry uses the pronouns I, my, and me to tell the story. And they are different between both points because in If a Woman Should Be Messiah poetry, someone outside the story tells the story. The author tries to describe the condition of women at that era. And meanwhile, in due form poetry, the author uses first-person point of view to tell the story of herself. And looking back to the author's background, we can say that the experience and the story in the poetry is the author's experience herself. So it might affect the usage of the first-person point of view in this poetry. Well, I think that's all that I can say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for both Balqis and Rizky. That's all about the explanation for our speakers in today's seminar. Hopefully, it could give new knowledge for all of you. Thanks for attention. Sorry for any mistaken. Good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.